Hi guys, I'm Phill from Australia and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today we're going to start working on theme and variations from Norma. Now this is arranged by Jean-Baptiste Arban. You will find it in the back of your Arban book if you have an Arban book. If not, I'll leave a link in the description and you can get it from there. It is an affiliate link, so I will get a little kickback from that if you make a purchase using that link, but it will be no expense to you. So if you'd like to support the channel, please use the link below and it really helped me out. Before we get started, I'd really like to recommend listening to the piece before we try playing the music. It's so much easier and we can learn so much faster a new piece of music or a new song to us if we know how it goes before we start. Now, you'll actually find a recording of this on my album, The Operatic Trumpet. I'll also leave a link in the description where you can go and check that out. It's on all streaming services, so Spotify, YouTube, YouTube Music, Apple Music, all of the major streaming services. You can get it from there. Doesn't cost you anything, but I'd suggest you go and have a listen to it. And also support my channel as well. Because this is such an in-depth piece, we're going to break it down into 4 different parts. Today's part 1. Today we're going to cover off on the first 2 movements. The first movement is the Casta diva, the aria Casta diva. Being an aria is a song commonly used in opera. We want to try and use that singing style throughout the entire piece. I like to use vibrato and rubato to help with the phrasing of this. Now that first line, the first 4 bars is the first phrase. You'll notice how I've broken it into 2-bar sections. Essentially the way I'm thinking about it, if I was to read this in a book sort of thing, it'd be 2 bars and then a comma, like a little pause comma, and then another 2 bars to finish off the phrase. You'll notice that I start at the steady tempo, but then I gradually get a bit faster as I go through the phrase, which means that I can then slow down the tempo a little bit at the end of the phrase. That's called rubato. Have another listen. Let's move on to the second phrase. We want to approach it very similarly to the first phrase. You'll notice that I've done the 2 bars and then that little comma type pause. Then in the 3rd bar, after the first beat, I've then put a little gap there as well for like another little comma to continue on to the phrase. But this whole phrase, so this whole section of the 3rd line on my part, goes all the way through. So the at note is essentially the G sharp in the 1, 2, 3, the 4th bar on beat 1. Now I'm going to piece the first 2 phrases together. I want you to have a listen to how I use vibrato, which is the wobble, the up and down of the pitch, and how it varies. So I start each note without vibrato and then I add it on my long notes. And how I use rubato, which is the getting faster and getting slower throughout each phrase. Now these 2 phrases, you'd notice that the first phrase is really calm and really gentle. But then as we progress through this second phrase, we see those accidentals, those sharps, and they start to create a bit more of what I call agitated. So this third phrase, so the second phrase is set up a bit more agitation. So this third phrase, we've created that tension. And you'll see through this third phrase that we've got more accidentals and we've got faster rhythms and we're starting to go higher in pitch. Have a listen to this third phrase and you'll see how it starts to go in that agitato type vibe. Notice how I increased my speed as I went through those first 3 bars. Now the first 3 bars I started at the regular tempo, but then I gradually got faster. This helped me build that agitato type vibe. Then when I got to the 4th bar, when playing those high A's, I really drew them back and I pulled back the tempo, which meant that I gave more on the B flat in that 5th bar. When I got to that peak, that B flat's the peak of the phrase. It's also the loudest part. So I actually have marked on my part 3 Fs, forte, fortissimo. So I crescendo from fortissimo in the bar before through to the forte, fortissimo in that B flat bar. The tempo I'm pulling back, so I'm taking time away before I finish it. But then in that the last 2 bars of this phrase, I'm then back to calm. So I've taken that tension away, like a wave kind of vibe. I'm going to play from the beginning through to that section. Have a listen to how I start calm. The agitato starts to creep in that second phrase. The third phrase, it's becoming very agitated. And then I'm peaking in the 4th phrase at the beginning of the 4th phrase before I come back to calm at the end of that phrase. Now we're at the cadenza. Now cadenza was the bit that we play without the piano, so without the accompaniment. So here we can be a little bit more flexible with the tempo. I like to play all cadenzas at a strong forte dynamic, and I like to start at the regular tempo and increase the tempo as we go through, and sometimes finishing a bit slower. Now you notice that I've changed up a little bit here. I like to do the first F as a bit of a pause. The E needs to be get together with the piano. So we need to make sure that we bring in with our bell, so conduct with our bell when we're coming in for that E. the piano will cut themselves off as you progress through the cadenza. I then put a pause on my C down the bottom of this quick phrase, then a breath mark after that C before I continue on. And then once again, the piano needs to come in and join us again on the A dotted quaver. Watch now how I conduct with my bell so that I get the piano with me when I need the piano with me. And now we're on to the main theme. Now this main thing is the Cabaletta. A little bit like a march. So I think of this a bit like, a bit march-like, but also opera march-like. So here to start off with, we have the semiquaver or 16th note into the downbeat or the one beat, which has got a crotchet on it. I like to think of this very similar to the Barber of Seville by Rossini. So it's ba-dum, so it's pick up, down. So ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bim, bum, bim. And you notice how after I get that established, I then pick up the tempo a little bit. I get a bit faster through this first phrase. But then on that second full bar of this, beat 2, where I have the minim or the half note, I pull the tempo back. So I was like, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum, bim, when I exaggerate it. And then I go back to winding the tempo up again. And then I do it again, the same thing, right? The ba-dum, the semiquaver into the crotchet, like very deliberate, ba-dum, very Barber of Seville. Pick the tempo up, pick the tempo up. Then on the last bar of this line, where on beat 2, where I have the E minim, once again, pull the tempo back. So it's a very quick bum, bum, ba-dum, bim, bum, bim. But that's exaggerated. So have a listen. You'll notice it now that I've explained it. And then the last 4 semiquavers of this section, you hear that I put a little row just to finish that off. Because we're now starting with a second little character here. So we're back onto another character. I like to think of this second character as a little bit cheeky, a little bit cheeky, a little bit naughty. So you can hear I'm a little bit cheeky with that. I put a little accent, which is marked on those syncopated crotchets. But then I put a little tenuto, so hold the first of the semiquaver run a little bit, and then I catch up. Now that we've completed that second character, we're back to the first character again. We want to phrase this very similar to the first phrase of the Cabaletta. I'm now going to play the whole section of the Cabaletta. And that is the first two movements of Norma, the theme and variations. You can get the sheet music from the link in the description. It's an affiliate link, so it will go towards supporting this channel. You don't have to pay anything extra for it. Go and have a listen to the recording. It's on my album, The Operatic Trumpet. I'll also leave a link in the description. Listen to it completely free on your choice of streaming service. So it doesn't cost you anything. Also goes towards supporting this channel. So go and have a listen to it on repeat so that you can get a good grasp of how the song goes before you practice it yourself. In the next video, we're going to start working on the variations. So we're going to start working on variation 1 in the next video. It's starting to get a bit technical here, so we're going to have a few other things to cover off on. As always, I'm Phill from Australia, and happy practicing.